Welcome. Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash editor and director, coming to you from Poetry Flash in Berkeley, California. Today we are pleased to present a reading by Stella Baratlis and Dane Cervine. This reading is co-sponsored by Moe's Books in Berkeley, but you can, for this reading only, you can purchase the featured books at www.sbdbooks.org. Please search under Stella Baratlis or Dane Cervine and visit our reading series bookshop online at bookshop. But you can also search for their names, but you can also visit our reading series bookshop online, bookshop.org/list/poetry-flash-readings. Please note, you are all muted on entry. Please do not unmute yourselves so that we can hear from our amazing poets. If you'd like to communicate with the poets or fellow audience members, please use the chat box. This reading is being recorded. We reserve some time at the very end for you to talk to the readers, so please save your spoken comments and thanks, the ones that aren't in the chat box, for then. I hope you can visit poetryflash.org and read our homage to Michael McClure and see much more wonderful editorial content. To sign up for our event email list, go to poetryflash.org and scroll down to join our mailing list. Here's Richard Silberg, associate editor, to introduce the poets.
Hello, people. We got a wonderful reading today. This is a 16 Rivers Press reading. And let me just start out by saying that 16 Rivers is definitely one of the jewels in Northern California's literary tiara to wax purple about, about them. 16 Rivers is a collective press that has the special feature of bringing in new authors who then work on producing their own books and folding into the collective and working to bring in new people. So it's a gorgeous literary jewel, snowball, whatever metaphor we want to use here, or none at all. 16 Rivers, yay. Now, our first reader is Dane Cervine, and you've got a number of books actually, Dane, but this is the first one, 16 Rivers, and it's called The World is God's Language. And God's language, as Dane translates him for us, is vertiginous and prolific and sometimes dazzling. He tells us early on that the book is written in short bursts of prose poetry, usually 2 per page. And that prose poetry model is modeled after Gary Young, who is indeed a master of short prose poetry. He's been actually many times in our series. And so Dane is writing in that form. And he tells us also that his father was a minister. And he has chosen to become a therapist rather than a minister. but I think we can say also that the world speaks, God speaks through the world. And the world is speaking through these short prose poems. So let's give him a warm welcome, Dane Cervine. Go ahead, Dane.
Wow, thank you, Richard. You really captured some essence of my history, and with my father, I really appreciate that. Many thanks to Joyce and Richard and Poetry Flash, and to 16 Rivers for I'm kind of the new kid on the block. Stella's, who's going to be reading next, has her second book out, so I'm really pleased to be here. And here's kind of, you'll see what the book looks like. And it is indeed, as Richard said, a series of paired, very tiny little prose poems. And my friend and mentor, Gary Young, was instrumental in helping me develop this style. I wanted to, just to set the tone, in the preface, in addition to acknowledging Gary, I like to make note that this title does not come from my fundamentalist Christian ancestors, even though I have several generations of preachers going way back, but it comes from the French political activist and mystic Simone Weil. This was her estimation of what the world is. And I also acknowledge the Buddhist teacher Kukai, who taught that the world is made up of a pictorial alphabet of image letters, or monji, spelling out the universe body to any who would read it. So that's kind of the spirit of the book. So thank you. The book is organized by sections, personal histories at the beginning, and moving out into travels and into the world at the end. Often I'll start at the beginning, but I'm going to reverse the order a bit. Each reading I do, I'm trying to pick new poems to read so that people haven't hear the same ones over and over again. And so I'm going to start on page 73 with, before the pandemic, my wife and I and family had opportunity to travel. And this poem called Finding Eden is a little bit of a juxtaposition of traveling around the world looking for something when there's so much at home. Finding Eden. Again in Bali, snorkeling the coral reefs of Indonesia, then wandering the temples of Eastern Kyoto, I return home to find my own garden overrun. Rose bushes, a tempest of dead buds, stone paths littered with weeds, spider webs strung from plum tree to fence in front of the serene Buddha, a snake lounging in the grass. I think that latter image is maybe a nod to my preacher father. The next poem, was located at the Memorial Peace Park in Hiroshima, which my wife was really intent on visiting. It's quite the place. And this poem is called Amaterasu, who's the goddess of the sun who created ancient Japan. And we were wandering through the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, hypnotized by the museum's history of war, nuclear devastation, charred bicycles, charred skin. My wife looks up. We wonder at the acres of agiri trees, Chinese parasol trees, grown now so large. Half a century later, shielding Earth again from the sky's great fire. And I will read the last of this travel series, the title poem, our first trip with family to Bali. This is entitled "The World is God's Language." And there was something about the astonishing way of where every micro, as I might say, in Balinese life mirrored the macro. It's the only Hindu-Buddhist island of Indonesia's 17,000 or so islands. But everything matters. So the world is God's language. Andi tells us how the best coffee in Bali comes from beans eaten by a fox, passed through, undigested, roasted, sold at exorbitant prices. That the whole banana tree is used for food, baskets, prayers. Everything in Bali has both use and spirit, even the careening motor scooter. At the curb, adorned with bamboo prayer baskets, filled with red hibiscus petals. It struck me as such an irony in the midst of this fabulous Balinese forest. There's all these, loud motor scooters, but the little red hibiscus petals show up every morning on the seat. It's such an amazing thing. Well, I go back into some of the personal history segments. I'm going to read a series of little poems about, some of you have heard, my parents bought land up near Yosemite, and my dad, who had spent 4 years in Japan during the Korean War, raised us in the Big Central Valley, Atwater, surrounded by Japanese things. It was a very odd cross-cultural melange. And they ended up retiring and building a series of hexagons that my father, based on his childhood favorite book, called Shangri-La, or the Village of Shangri-La. And so he passed away in 2002. My mom, who came to live with us, passed away a couple of years ago. But when she was up there, even after my dad died, she lived a mile up a dirt road and was quite an amazing woman. So this was just one of my moments with her up there. It's called World Yoga. Yoga in the outdoor pagoda hexagon with my 80-year-old mother. The thin summer screen decorated with orange and green butterflies keeps the bugs out, still lets the world in. A smiling stone Buddha watches every move. 6 gunshots echo from a rifle in the hills. A hunter stalking squirrel, birds, even deer. My mother doesn't mind. Death, she says, is just another way the world moves. Which really came back, last year and a half, where she ended up living with us for about 7 years and then passed away on hospice here in our back studio. And she had such an amazing way of doing her last year. So I think I learned a lot from my mom in that way. So maybe, she lived 18 years after my dad. I thought I'd bring in a little dad poem. This is when my son, Gabe, he's kind of quite the spoken word poet, tall, loud, amazing. But when he was a little kid, we visited up in one of the hexagons after my dad passed away. This is called The Black Slippers. After my father died, I brought one pair of his black flip-flop slippers home with me. The first time I wear them, my son comments, "Those were Grandpa's." Looks at me as though by this small act, I am bringing him to life again. The clop clop across the tiled kitchen floor, an aural reincarnation. I tell him when next we visit Grandma, I'll show him a secret. Already I can see him opening the shed door, tilting the brown grocery bag filled to the brim with black slippers, watching them spill across the floor as a path for both of us to walk on. I think my dad used to go to Costco and load up on things. So that was one of the things we found after he died, was a big bag full of black slippers. I'm going to bring my wife's family is from the Midwest, Madison, Indiana. I tell her we grew up in the same town, Atwater, California, Madison, Indiana, were both small towns, despite it being California and Indiana. So we go back there regularly. And this is about, it's called The Unseen, one of those, again, moments with our parents. My wife circles the winter pond in Madison, Indiana, having spent the day with her father in the adjacent nursing home. He knows his daughter, but grabs at thin air to touch a fruit tree, a dog, a tombstone no one else can see. Marvels as she walks right through them. She tells me this as her words rise invisibly through the cold steam of her breath to travel via cell phone towers to my ear in California. Though I can't see her, I know she is there. This was one of the poignant things of that, sometimes we can't see what the dying see, but I can't see my wife either. Somehow we're communicating. Every once in a while, so here's a poem called The Conjurer. I don't ever read a poem. I haven't read this poem before. It's my younger brother, Scott, and when he graduated from high school, he was the one of the youngest junior magicians at the Magic Castle in LA, and he traveled the world doing magic, my little brother. So my dad built him a hexagon while he traveled, called The Conjurer. My youngest brother became a magician, traveled the world winning prizes. My father built him a hexagon all his own, with floor to ceiling mirrors to practice in front of. When father died, my brother became a filmmaker, capturing in images what he could not conjure from the empty box, not just memory, but love's real body. We, when he was still young, my brother did a series of 3 short films about my dad, found this amazing actor to play that role. And we were very much aware of I'm a poet, so I conjure differently than my brother who does it through film, but the way we conjure is via art, I think, is one of the most, moving things. How about now a little, I haven't read this poem in a while. It's called Trusting the World. I'm a Zen practitioner and a therapist and a lot of other things. I'm a grandpa. I have my granddaughter is new in my life. But there's this idea of intimacy with the world and what can you trust in Zen. And you can trust the world to be the world. So this was another encounter. You picture this up in the hexagons up in Mariposa. Trusting the world. Winter morning, visiting my aging mother in her forest home, I step into the outdoor redwood shower, close the wooden sliding door. Down falls a tiny black bat, wakened from sleep, pummeled by the steaming water till my hand can reach the knob. It looks as befuddled as I am. Enfolding the wet bat in a towel, I lay it outside on the deck, watch it shudder, its pulsing lungs work, its small wings weakly stretching. Later, after a walk past the fallen oak, the trickling snowmelt, the hazy sun's warmth, I return to the deck, empty, and find it empty. Trusting the bat has become prey or cat or found its way again under the dark eaves. So that's a little sample of the little prose poems in this book. I wanted to end with a couple of poems just from an earlier book. Let me see which one. So this was Earth as a Pickle Dancer. It has kind of a lot of ecological poems and psychological poems. I'm a therapist. I thought I'd read one about my daughter, just because we've been enjoying her showing up. She teaches AP history, and she brings her grandkid by, and we have a cup of coffee, and we watch for 5 weeks now. We've been watching the little guy Wyatt. But when you watch your kids become things that you have no idea that they'll become, I gave this poem the title "Beauty," even though it's maybe different than what a parent might expect. After landing her first professional job teaching advanced placement history to high school juniors, my daughter heads to the tattoo parlor for her first irrevocable brand, Mad to Live. She is in love with history, its indelible stain, the facts and figures of this inscrutable human story inked on the subtle folds of her delicate gray matter like the letters on her back. My one and only daughter, firstborn, privy to her father's enigmatic failures, the loss of her first love, a young friend to bone cancer, mentors with a brain tumor here, blindness there. The way history is a litany of loss, but also the story she craves. The wars, inquisitions, renaissances are personal in her blood. I love how she has taken up knife throwing, knows how to shoot a gun, skin a rabbit for food, will be the one prepared for apocalypse, who can take care of herself in this mad history of a world where living is not only a matter of loving, but how to survive its dark brand. Each burning letter a way of saying yes, of saying live. That's my daughter. I thought I'd read a quirky poem called Meditation. You know, I weave some of my art and meditation therapy together for better and worse. And after a week-long silent meditation retreat that was the Pacific Zen Institute, you know, the main guy is John Tarrant, who's also a Jungian therapist and grew up in Tasmania. And he's very much evokes a mingling of the arts, and has asked me to do poems based on some of that experience. So I came up with this one called Meditation, and kind of about how he says it's about making friends with yourself instead of battling your mind bludgeoning your mind into quiescence. Meditation. The Japanese poet Issa says, it's like riding naked on a horse in the pouring rain. Though Damon likens it to last night's dream, wiping sweat from the body of a man, life as Michelangelo's David. Mary, still fierce from her daughter's death last year, wants nothing to do with it now. The It is meditation all the way through, especially the new koan, where an older woman calls her young love, little Jade, not because she wants something, but just to hear the lost girl's name. John first felt it when, as a child, he was the lightning and the cliff, and not just a child. Says old English poems are filled with such moments, the mariner and the albatross, the roiling serpents he blesses and through grief is brought back to life. John says Buddha's father treated old age, disease, and death as pornography, something to turn away from, but Gautama knew this too was the way, the mind. Like Gandalf facing the elvish door to the dark mines of Moria, attempting every wizardry to break the spell, till defeated, Frodo simply says, "Friend," and the door inside opens. And I'll end with one poem on that kind of trend. This was the previous book. It's kind of hard to see. It's called The Gateless Gate, Polishing the Moon Sword. And this came as a request from the Zen teacher to go write, join the long line of Chinese and Japanese poets' responses to old koans. So that's what most of the book is. To give you an example, this is koan 29, called Neither the Wind Nor the Flag. In the Gateless Gate has 48 koans. And so the koan, very traditional one, says, the wind was flapping the temple flag. Two monks were arguing about it. One said the flag was moving. The other said the wind was moving. Arguing back and forth, they could come to no agreement. The sixth ancestor approached and said, "It is neither the wind nor the flag that is moving. It is your mind that is moving." And so my little poem that I'll end with is called Beyond the Eye. You have to kind of visually see the poem, E-Y-E, beyond the physical eye, but also the eye. Eno, who's the sixth patriarch, Eno whispers, "A fish swims in water, never knowing ocean. Burrowing, the worm is blind to earth. Each bird assumes the air. For me, there are hints. Driving down the road, everyone in front is too slow, everyone behind, too fast. The good that happens seems meant to be. Everything else, someone else's failure. Secretly, I prefer the old cosmology, the universe revolving around the earth, me at the center. Or reading Darwin, I begin to believe all is survival, nothing is play. Others are always better, or always worse. But then I notice flying squirrels that soar between trees, how whales swim in one world, breathe in another. And then in Australia, how Aborigines move from dreaming to here and back again. I once asked a man who died, just for a moment, what it was like. He'd felt himself floating above the emergency room table as his body completed his heart attack, watched as he slipped back inside the body's glove, opened his eyes, felt the eye behind the eye, this mind that we move through without even seeing. That's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dane. Thank you. Our next reader is Stella Baratlis. This is her second book with 16 Rivers. The first book is the Alkali Sink, which was nominated for the Northern California Book Award, and she is the poet laureate of Modesto. And in this new book, Dust Bowl Venus, Modesto is definitely a heroine. Revolves through the poems, the history, and she told there are notes at the end which are very useful. They're very useful notes because there's some mystery in these poems, and the notes help us to solve some of these mysteries. But let me say, there's beautiful, pure lyric poetry here, and the mystery is part of the music. You can just go with these poems. But Stella tells us that Dust Bowl Venus was a term that she heard in a presentation on building the world in science and science fiction, and she just loved that title. She said, "That's it. I'm running with this title." And tells us also that Venus, in her mind, refers to the guiding muse of this book, who is Hazel Hauser, uh, a a singer, a songwriter who came to Modesto from Oklahoma in the Depression. And each section of the book opens with a quatrain from Hazel. And you know, as I say, there are all kinds of poems here, elegies and love poems. There is an unusual amount of science language in the poems, but they're pure, beautiful lyric poems. So let's give her a warm welcome, Stella Baratlis.
Thank you so much, Richard. I'm cracking up at the that you mentioned the notes at the end. So my copy editor, Carolyn Miller, suggested that I have a section of notes to explain some of the terms and phrases. And I thought, really? Is that going to be maybe too, I don't know, too nerdy or librarian-ish? Maybe I should have done footnotes. Who knows? Anyway, thank you, though. I'm glad that you found them helpful. They're very casual Stella notes and not highly researched. So I hope I got them right. I'd like to thank the members of 16 Rivers Press for being so supportive to all of us authors, and also for helping shape the book, Dust Bowl Venus. I'll need to show you the cover here. I am in love with the cover. It was designed by a graphic artist named Frank Young, who's also a co-author of an award-winning graphic novel called The Oregon Trail. And he also did a graphic novel about the Carter family as well. So that was really exciting. And the image on the cover is a painting from an artist named Jim Damron, who I went to high school with and who lives in Merced now. So yes, this is very steeped in the region here in the Central Valley and Modesto in particular. I'd like to start with the opening poem, Space-Time Curvature. And I'm kind of going to read a lot of Modesto poems or, valley poems because the valley is a character throughout the book. Space-time curvature. Scratch under the hard pan, turn over a shovel full of soil, inhale. Obscured data lies in wait. You will discover it. For years, pay undue attention to the things this place is not. The negative capability of valley, the not reaching after facts. And then the Hotel Houston is demolished. We stand in the middle of J Street, watch masonry tumble in on itself, hot planets crushing pressure, a mushroom of dust plumes first into the sky, then freezes, snapshotting memory. Remember where we are? We live on a seasonal lake bed. We live in lowland regions on Dust Bowl Venus. In this valley, our forefathers are deserters, landholders, railroad men, Comstock plunderers. Their secrets deposited inside the city's darkest heart, a drainage, a tule berm, a vernal pool. Yeah, I spent a lot of time researching the Delta and specialized language about the Delta. And I have a dear friend who's like a water quality engineer. And that friend gave me lots of tips on, where to go to look for explanations of things. And that's actually where one of the titles of the poem, Root Cause Failure Analysis, comes from that friend. What grows here is what I'm reading now. And this is a poem in 3 parts. 1, you remember the names. You might say we get emotional when along 99 South, we see trucks and trailers pulling those bales suitable for consumption, precise rectangles fresh with swagger and sway, precarious promise of bit and endless chew, that livestock fodder. Then trailer of tomatoes in and out for pre-processing baths, while factory gates remain open all August long. Inside, the head mechanic is a poet, tunes words and engines, writes lines on the line. His kind is an heirloom, a boxcar Willie or purple Cherokee that ripens too late for the cannery, but is perfect for the yard. And oh, we toil for it outside, our giant ox hearts in cages. 2, Myrtle of the Tomatoes. We see you in the garden, no Massey Ferguson, no almond dust. You grow enough for all, you sing to no choir. Oh, Myrtle, you transform even the back alley into rows and furrows and rows. 3, Holy Basil. At the intersection of Texas and Crow's Landing, he stands. Rosemary in pocket, the man who grows the basil. All of his life packed, the work of it, the sore knees, the sweat, into orderly cylinders of regret, fresh with summer's bursting heart. He muses on the city's blurred stars, a songwriter who, a baby who, the Marine who, the baker who carried a fresh sourdough right to your door, the geometry of her face doubled by her straight hair. All of those sacred, incomparable ones, those who live, die, and live again, they are here. They are making mud out of dry soil. All right, so this next one is a poem that I wrote to a building located at the corner of 10th and I Street in Modesto. And it originally was a bank, and it's been vacant for, it seems, decades now, at least a decade. The title is Historic Structure Report, addressed to the building at 833 10th Street, Modesto. The asparagus fern of commerce overspills your planters, thrives along your bones, while inside, borrowed money, ball gowns, and loggia daydreams consider a dance. Your glass, columns, composite floors, and floral stamped metal, those vertical striations raked in the cement, all expressions of a certain mid-century mindset. Let me enter through the south door. Usher me in with your hush and opaque starburst truth. Accept my payments at the counter, for I've been saving up for you. Hush, my monolith. I took notes. I know your mystery. I've heard your whispers, spelunked the caverns inside us both. I've imagined walking up your grand staircase and finding your soul right there along the sweeping mezzanine. Give me your hand underneath the bubble light. Let us both dazzle, fully lit at night. Yeah, and after that poem, I read that that some company bought it and they're going to make a steakhouse out of it. So, well, I guess we all turn into a Texas Roadhouse at some time. This next poem is references the Mchenry Brothers. One of them was a Civil War deserter and changed his name to avoid being caught and returned to the army. He had been stationed at Fort Bragg, and apparently it was just terrible, as you can imagine. And so I kind of, imagined Oramil being in Modesto today, watching the nonprofits and the city leaders as they were working to put up a tent city to house all the homeless families in our area. And this happened a couple of years ago. Literally, they got a bunch of tents and put them up outside of town in a terrible place under a bridge. This one is titled Oramil's Dream. I am a founding father of this city, which rediscovers itself every day as new arrivals check in at the station and children take rations to their tents, then play under the bridge, watchful, waiting for the missionaries to arrive with clothes and salvation, waiting for their inheritance of sidewalk, of median strip. I am a war deserter reviewing your appeal for a doorway, rain gutter, endowment of bedroom window, a brick fireplace bequest, who changed my name and never looked back, who watches still my children huddled, carbon smudge eyes hardening to knives. Even now I withhold what always belonged to you. I think that's probably not one that you want to read at the Rotary Club. And so, Richard mentioned that I'm the Poet Laureate of Modesto. I just finished my term as Poet Laureate. I served from 2016 to 2020. And as is typical with the Modesto Poet Laureate role, you are asked by lots of service groups to present poems at events. And I did not get many requests from the city of Modesto itself to read poems at city council meetings, but I did write some occasional poems that were really hard for me to do those well. I kind of had to change my mindset. Like, this is not going to be published in a book. This is going to be read at an event. Yeah, so it was a really weird kind of different muscle flexing for me as a poet, the occasional poem. This one is titled Water, Wealth, Contentment, Health, which is also the slogan that you can see on the arch in downtown Modesto. Water, Wealth, Contentment, Health, H2O. In this city of drought or atmospheric river, you lean against me, slightly behind my body, hand in pocket. I superimpose a smaller form against your height. Meanwhile, shadow selves behind the smiles arrange this other shape, this fractal of us, a sentient creature threatening its own weather, a willy-nilly water cycle, inevitable torrent. $. If my credit score were higher, Modesto, we'd be married. You are my first choice, the most valuable asset in a field of questionable possibilities. Infinity. For a 2-month period, she felt calm inside the snow globe fog world, when the clock struck onion-scented midnight. Epigenetics has transformed the way we think about genomes. Oh, really, Modesto? The prefix epi, over, outside of, around, suggests factors layered atop the city. Beloved city, what a wonder. In what tender ways do your fingers press into our very genes to make a point about chaos? Each twinkle gland comprises a point on your elevated arch, builds an altar to Our Lady of activated cells. Your downtown, a sensitive gut brain signaling neurotransmitters to destinations unknown, keeping us out of range, barely within love's reach, while we walk beside monsters and stopped trains. Still, we endeavor, incandescent. And can't have a book without having a road poem. So Highway 99 is in here. And this is my last little Modesto Central Valley themed poem. How many times have I driven north onto Highway 99 into the arms of this or that man for the promise of rocks on the shore to meet my chaos waves, only to have the shore dissolve to a tidal pool of sea stars, a disappearing bench where two lovers sit in full view of leisure boaters like statues of lust. How many times did I drive south on Highway 99, where the valley crinkles into reverse alluvial plain, then straight down to the park bar, my own reverse migration over the poppy-washed grapevine, my chest fully open, a wrecked guitar stand in the back, waiting for takers. And I think that poem is a really good transition into some of the poems that I have in here that are that feature music or songwriting. As Richard said, you know, the muse of the book is a songwriter named Hazel Hauser. And I came to Hazel's work via a weird, unhealthy obsession with the Leuven Brothers. Some of you know about the Leuven Brothers. They were a country duo who recorded and played in the 50s. They have this really great album cover called, for their album, Satan is Real, that has, you know, like flames of hell with a devil and a pitchfork. And it's kind of a classic album cover. Anyway, so I was just listening to these songs over and over on my Leuven Brothers CDs. And I realized that there were a few that I was drawn to. So I researched the songwriters. And lo and behold, I discovered that one of the songwriters of these songs that I loved was a woman named Hazel Hauser. And furthermore, she's from Modesto. And I was completely flabbergasted because I thought, what? I've never heard of her before, but these songs are amazing. And lots of other country artists have covered the songs. And so they're well known by people who are into country music and bluegrass music. And so I kind of delved into Hazel, and I contacted her family even after so many years, and I interviewed her son and her daughter, and I discovered that there's notebooks full of songs that have not been recorded. So I'm really excited, and I feel like I need to make something happen with that, but you know, I'm just a librarian in Modesto. I don't know. But I'm encouraging the family, like, please, you know, let's like give up the notebook and let's get a band together. Not me, I don't play music, but let me find a band to play these songs and we will record them and Hazel will be out in the world again. Anyway, that's a really long preface to tell you that I have a lot of poems in the book that reference Hazel or that are written from her point of view, you know, an imagined point of view. She's a character here. So here's the first one of those. It's called Perfect Love Song. We wake, Paganini stung on Steiner, Paganini plucked where the bow scrapes out stories an ardent heart might believe, bone and ligament narratives. Rimbaud in Paris, wine and blue 59, sports car night ride across a twinkle-lit city, and Hell's Bells Concerto #1 still playing on the turntable. In the warped space of time travelers, I'll take the pop slide of needle, writing the label for hours after the music already ended. Ergo Paganini, ergo you, whom I love always inside the oddball random letters, the run out groove, roots, knots, and wind, not recognized by the international system of units. I see your structure, words you reused in letters back to me, the bow's slicing arc, the many Januaries of my demise, etc. Except it's your end, coming just after drunken words. All the boys been saying it, you look so good. But Paul, I'm dreaming of perfect fifths, sickness and pizzicato. You are sprung and strung with gut. You are stretched, dried, and twisted Pacific. You burrow into my skin like ticks. I am held inside your morning. Did you guys notice that I accidentally, I read a line from a different poem from a page turning incident, but I feel like I recovered very well. Inventory of household items. I'm conducting a survey for insurance purposes. Clipboard, please note, my lucky strike sign. It's every atom of neon trembling to light in noir silhouette. The wasted extravagance of set jaw, knife block of face. Next, a cigar box on the coffee table contains one 64-page spiral-bound manuscript book, 6 staves per page, and a #1 Ticonderoga pencil. Consider the stave, the 5 parallel lines and spaces between them. 64 times 6, a multiplicity of staves, a murder of telephone wires singing the dots, withholding the words. In the event of fire or disaster, I will need this list. Listen only, those dots are one-minded, fly off together as one constellation, are written in the softest of pencils, gentle black-filled dots, easily wiped off as needed, easily repeated. The smoke of this dream stays in the air, long after the trombone-like vocal phrasing has been erased, long after that night when all the stars fell. Those little houses are gone. Clipboards hold only temporary data, so where does this document get filed? Maybe next to the postcard on the fridge, an ode to domesticity, chained to the imaginary mundane in Louis Armstrong's blue kitchen. I allowed the dreams to make a spiral steeple the same way Watts Towers was built. Took your broken plates, a chipped tile from the patio, a rock from Lillian Street, and cemented them all to my bones, where they now mosaic my calcified infrastructure, haunt this tiny house. And yeah, I'm just looking at the time here. I think I have time for another 1 or 2. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to say, I saw Rosa Lane here. Hi, Rosa, if you're still here. I saw my friend Zach Zagato here. Hello, Connie Post. Hi, all the 16 Rivers people. Yay, I'm so happy to see you. Rosa wrote me a really beautiful blurb for this book. So special shout out to you, Rosa, for that thoughtful piece of writing. So I'm gonna read Survey on Brooms and Broomcorn, and then one last poem. In this poem, you will hear references to music halls that existed around the Central Valley where the country bands played. Survey on Brooms and Broomcorn. A housewife sweeps floors, dreams arrangements in scuffs and drags, articulates the pause between verse and note. Her body, a neat broom, whisking the floors of the riverbank clubhouse, her feet keeping continuous contact with the scuffed boards of the California ballroom. She herself is stitched with 4 rows of waxed cotton, guitar in hand, blunt cut hair tips of pure broomcorn. Oh, rhythm guitar, oh, harmony duet, you delicate parlor broom. Her heart has these contours like beech, birch, other light wood. Turn it with gentle pressure, sand it and call it ordinary care. Stain it, call it a song. I guess I should say one thing about my wonderful Hazel Hauser, my imaginary Hazel Hauser. She was a mom. She was a single mom for a time until she remarried. And she worked in the canneries in Modesto and also had her own snack bar and just was very resourceful and industrious. And so some of these poems, these poems are just my using Hazel as a figure. And the family of Hazel Hauser, I had to say, like, these aren't actually poems about Hazel. Don't worry, I'm not getting Hazel to have sex with people in these poems. They were really, they're such a fine and upstanding family. And here I am writing about, this poem, for example. This is going to be my last poem. It's titled Conversation with a Lover About the Leuvens. You don't get it. Desires an underground fruiting body. This song, its presentable iteration. That bodes well, don't you think? I love you under the front porch lattice, my blind Blake. Don't squander it. First, step down into the street in darkness delight. Next, rye paired with a pear, the pear pared down to leather, blue jean and thigh. Hazel's rules for songwriting dip from the deeper wells. Well, we are. Let us remember the frayed interior of her collar, the resoled boots, the space where she pressed through to us, grew from your spindly tomato plant into our blind unminding. Remember, from the banks of the River Jordan, she's minding our constant unwinding, creating a hall of fame of our neglect. On this Mother's Day, my heart's on holiday with that Modesto housewife who only now, oh country gospel boy, wrote about this, what she wrote, what it's about, what about it, until it drains from my eye, that vision, that seismic morning drinking coffee from a bowl while squinting in Jesus's light. Thank you so much.
All righty. Go ahead, Stella. I interrupted you, did you?
No.
Okay, thank you so much to these 2 fine poets, Dane, Cervine, Stella Baratlis. Special thanks to the wonderful 16 Rivers Press. And here comes Joyce to sign us off.
Okay. Richard. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks to these 2 wonderful poets. Thank you, Stella and Dane. And thanks to our tech support, Rosalinda. And thank you all for joining us. And please check out these 2 wonderful new books. Please go to Small Press Distribution, www.spdbooks.org, or the 16 Rivers Press website. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today.